The word sustainability seems to get thrown around a lot these days, especially when it comes to farming and agriculture. But what does it really mean? Well, this episode, we're hosting a discussion all about just that.
By definition, if you're trying to sustain something, you want it to continue for long periods of time. Agriculture is the epitome of an industry designed around building an operation that's going to be here for a long time.
That's Janice Holscher, Managing Director and Head of Agricultural Banking at Scotiabank. She's joined by Dr. Sally Fliss, the Director of Sustainable Ag Programs at Nutrien Ag Solutions. They'll explore not only what sustainability means and how it applies to agriculture, but how it plays an important role in the story that farmers and growers tell the public. They'll also fill us in about the partnership between Scotiabank and Nutrien, and much more.
It's about what are the practices that are going to put your farm in a position that you're going to be able to build something that you're going to be able to pass on. And that's what agriculture is all about.
I'm Stephen Maurice, and this is Perspectives. Sally, Janice, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Really looking forward to it.
All right. Sally, I'm going to start with you. You work for Nutrien. For those of us who do not work in the agricultural field, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what Nutrien is and what you do there.
Yeah, Nutrien is a Canadian-based business. We're based in Calgary. And actually, the only place that you fly into in Canada where you mention Nutrien as a name that they're going to know who we are is Saskatoon. We have the biggest building in town, and that's where a bunch of our potash mines are. So we are a manufacturer of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium fertilizer that is sold globally. But we're also an ag retail business that sells directly to growers in the U.S., Canada, Latin America, and Australia. And so we really work up and down that whole supply chain of products and services for growers to be as efficient in the field and productive in the field as they can be.
Okay. Janice, I'll come to you in a second, but maybe just a little bit more about that. You do hear about potash, and I guess that would be the main product that Nutrien makes.
Yeah, so nitrogen is fixed from the atmosphere when we make nitrogen fertilizer. So we make nitrogen fertilizer, we make potassium fertilizer, and we make phosphorus fertilizer. So the nitrogen fertilizer we manufacture at a couple of sites in Alberta, and then the potash is mined from underground. That's a really cool tour if you ever get a chance. If you're out in Saskatoon and looking for something to do, it's really cool to go down in the mines and see how that process actually happens. And then the phosphate fertilizer comes from surface mining operations, some in the US, some global. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium are the three main limiting nutrients when a plant grows, any plant, whether it's a crop or a tree or whatever it is.
Okay. And so as I understand it, and basically it's what you said, Canada and Saskatchewan in particular is a world leader in the production of these fertilizers, sold all over the world.
Yep.
Okay. Janice, why don't you tell us a little bit about this relationship or partnership that Scotiabank has with Nutrien?
Sure. So we've been partnering with Nutrien for more than 20 years. The way we look at agriculture across my team, our tagline is "We Get Ag." So what we try to do is we try to bring to our customers more than just, here's a banking package and credit account. We try to think about ways that we can enhance the overall value that we're going to bring. And that sounds like a little bit of a motherhood statement, but it means that we partner with other companies that are incredibly important to the agricultural industry, to all of our farmers. I mean, just clearly the small explanation that Sally was giving as far as what Nutrien is doing, they're a key partner. You can't grow if you don't have fertilizer and if you don't have the products that are going to help. So to us, we look for partnerships with organizations like Nutrien that are going to be able to benefit our customers. And then, we have a number of programs that we've worked on with them, one of which that we're going to be talking about today, a little bit more around sustainability, that just bring more of that value. So we're bringing a broader solution than here's the interest rate we can offer. We're bringing the value, the advice.
One of the things we get asked about all the time from either other partners or non-governmental organizations or farmers in the field is, how can we find other ways besides cash incentives or rebates to incentivize growers to make practice changes? And one of the ways that we've always wanted to explore is, how do we offer preferential or unique financing opportunities for growers that are doing the right practices, that are following sustainable practices in the field. And so we've been able to partner with Scotiabank and take our Sustainable Nitrogen Outcomes program, which allows the grower to be able to participate potentially in a carbon marketplace and get paid for reductions in carbon emissions from the use of our nitrogen fertilizer. And when they do that, if there are expenses that grower might have to buy a specific product or service to be able to implement and be in our program, they can get financed at a preferential rate for those things that growers who aren't implementing those practices and enrolling in our program don't have access to.
Okay. You mentioned sustainability. We've talked a bit about sustainability in agriculture on the show before. And Sally, you host your own podcast called the Farm Smart Podcast. And on that show, among other things, part of your goal is, quote, cutting through the noise of sustainability. Tell me what you mean by that and why is sustainability important in farming? Yeah,
so that cutting through the noise is really getting to what are the practices, products, services, tools that we have available that growers are going to use when they make those everyday decisions about planting a crop and how they're going to manage it. Mm-hmm. And really getting to the details of what sustainability is, really talking about enhancing nitrogen use efficiency, growing yields, improving soil health, reducing loss of nutrients to the environment, and what are the tools and products and services that we have that can help the grower do that.
I think it's important when you think about sustainability to think about it as you're sustaining, right? By definition, if you're trying to sustain something, you want it to continue for long periods of time. Agriculture as an industry is the epitome of an industry designed around building an operation that's going to be here for a long time. The vast majority of farms are family farms in Canada, for sure. And they're looking to be able to continue that tradition to pass the farm on. So they wanted to sustain. So one of the things that we really like about working with Nutrien and in conversations with Sally have enjoyed is the focus on these things are going to make you a better farmer. They're going to add value to what you're trying to build. And by definition, it's going to make it more sustainable. So I think that's kind of more the important lens to try to put on this. It means that we're trying to help you build something that's going to last. You're going to pass it on to your kids and they're going to pass it on to their kids. And that's what agriculture is all about.
Well, and to add to that, Janice, like you said, it's about figuring out what is that real why for the grower, right? Like they may not want to implement a practice or use a new product. Has nothing to do with the performance of that practice or product. It's, do they have the right financing? It's, is there somebody who's going to come in and take over the farm after them? So why would they make that investment if the next step in the land is not going to be in their family? And so one of the advantages that Nutrien has with our retail business is we've got globally about 3,500 crop consultants on the ground. That's what they do every day. They sit down with the growers, they figure out what is their why, what is their limiting factor. Is their limiting factor financial? Is it not enough land? Is it no generational planning? What is it? Because there probably is a dollar amount that we can go to growers with and they'll make whatever practice change we want. Nobody's going to spend that dollar amount. So until you understand the real reason why they're hesitant to make a practice change, we're not going to move that grower forward in a sustainability journey on a continuous improvement plan to continue to be more efficient and productive with every acre they're managing.
So there is a part, an education part of it, but there's also recognizing the ultimate consumer, right? And consumer preferences have changed. And a part of what we're trying to also do is to make sure that producers are aware of what those changes are because they want to be able to continue to sell their product. At the end of the day, everybody's got choices. So if we can be part of that education process, both for the producer themselves, but also, better explaining to consumers and what have you, here's how agriculture works. This is where your products are coming from. Then we're all going to win. So there's a lot of components to it. And partnering with a company like Nutrien gives us an opportunity to just expand that repertoire of how we're talking to agricultural customers, to farmers about how you can have a better business, build a better business, be responsive, and have the operation around for a long time.
Okay, well, you've covered off an awful lot of stuff just there in those couple of answers. I'm going to take just a step back. I think, as you said, sustainability, even if it wasn't called that, was always part of farming and agriculture because you need your land to keep producing for decades. It's not just something you use up and you get a new one. It's got to keep producing. So by definition, sustainability was always part of it. But how has that evolved? Sally, you've been in this line of work for some period of time. How have you seen notions of sustainability evolve over the course of the last, say, couple of decades?
Yeah, so I think I'd start with when I started in this field 20 years ago, working directly with growers on practices and practice implementation and what they needed to do to meet regulations for having large animal operations. We asked them to do the same 5 practices we do today: no-till, cover crops, nutrient management, crop rotation, and nutrient management planning. So the practices and the theories and agronomy hasn't changed. There's new products and services and things we can add to enhance those agronomic recommendations, but it's been the same for the whole time. And when I did it 20 years ago, we didn't call it sustainability or regenerative or anything else. It was just agronomic consulting. So I think the biggest thing that's changed, that's most obvious to me, is the terminology. Like, we still talk to the growers about the practices as the practices are and what the changes are going to take for them to actually be able to implement a practice. But that interest from that downstream consumer in where their food is coming from and how it's produced is really the biggest change in it. There's been technology additions and new products that we can use to continue to enhance that journey for the grower. But it's really the interest in where food is coming from that's changed the most in the last 20 years, I think.
I would say one of the other things that has changed is that I think in some ways, some of this stuff was perceived to be kind of a luxury. And what happened and what we've been happy to be a part of is bringing a lot of that knowledge to smaller operations. You can do this stuff. It's not going to be all that expensive. There are programs that are set up for you. It's going to make it a better operation. And also, we talk to growers a lot and explaining a lot of the benefits. Sometimes people have just been doing things the same way. And it's possible that there's some things that we could talk to you about that would actually benefit your operation, make it more sustainable, and it is not going to be too difficult. It's not going to be too expensive. There's a lot of improvements in technology. A lot of costs have come down. Partnership programs like ours have been set up to try to make that broader and to also bring to a lot of our customers that, as we talked about before, these are the new consumer trends. As you were saying, the downstream pull from it. Consumers are much more with it about where their food comes from and what goes in their food and how it's harvested and all of those kinds of things. And just making farmers aware of that and then presenting, here's a way that you can answer that.
You both talked about the consumer at the end of the day, and I guess increasing pressures really as people become way more aware of their food sources and where it comes from. What do you hear from your clients, farmers, about that? Do they feel the pressure directly? Does it affect the way they think about how they produce their food? One
of the things that's true about agriculture and agricultural products is that people want to know more, but there's a lot of misinformation. So when we talk to our customers, they really want to have an opportunity to better explain how this all works. And I think to some degree, over the last couple of years, a lot of Canadian farmers feel like they've been tarred a little bit, whereas in reality, the overwhelming majority of farmers are doing everything they possibly can to make sure that the land is in a good condition. And they want to do that because, as we said, want to pass it on.
I would echo that. I think growers are frustrated that they haven't been able to tell their story really well. We had a carbon summit when I first started in December of 2021 in Saskatoon, which was not a great choice of location for December, in case you're wondering. The growers that attended, one of the comments we got back from them, or many of them commented back to us, that they really appreciate that an organization like Nutrien, with our partners, is trying to tell this story, is doing things to try and highlight what growers are doing well and support that storytelling. So one of the programs that we introduced 3 years ago was our Sustainable Success Champions program. So as a business, as Nutrien, we recognize that partnership between our crop consultants and our grower customers that are on that cutting edge of picking practices, interacting with their communities, and implementing the practices that are driving sustainability and probably going above and beyond.
Janice, what is the story you're trying to tell? How do you tell the story to the broader public about what's going on in agriculture and what sustainability means in agriculture?
I think it's a combination of things. Part of it is trying to get through the veil of how you think your food is made. And that has, you guys know, because we've taken you out to some farms in Western Canada and, been telling the story about how do cattle operations actually work? How does a grain farm actually work? So there's an education component that we feel we have a role to play. Part of it is educating producers that this is actually part of what you need to do. What most producers want to do is they want to grow their product or feed their livestock or milk their cows or whatever it is. That's what they want to do. And we spent a lot of time talking to them about the fact that this is another aspect of your business. You need to think about environmental issues. You can't just stand at the top of a hill or on a soapbox someplace and say, what you guys think is not true. You have to think about how do you articulate the way it actually does work. So we work with them. We work with a number of farming associations. We try to do some of these podcasts. We're constantly talking. I'm actually going to be at a conference in a little while in which I'm going to be talking to them about here's the best way to present what your business does in terms that consumers will understand. So we're trying to penetrate through the misinformation. But I also think that we need as Canadians to do a way better job selling what we do broadly for a lot of things. And one of the things that's true is we produce an incredible amount of food for the rest of the world in a very sustainable manner. And that's a story that, to the extent that we can be talking to governments and talking to organizations and just talking to people and getting that message out, I think that's a part of the value that we bring. And it is true. Canadians, we're just not really good at promoting ourselves and telling our story and getting out there. We can do a better job. And this is something we should be immensely proud of, is how well we grow food in a very responsible manner. And to the extent that, at Scotia, we can be partnering with another organization that's doing things practically to help that happen, that's awesome.
Okay. Any final thoughts, Sally, on the state of sustainability? Again, hesitate even to use the word now at this point in our conversation, but where we're at now, where we're headed, are you optimistic?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. I think it's only going to get better between the interest that growers have in it and the interest that our crop consulting staff has in it, partnerships that we have with different organizations like Scotiabank, and just bringing unique opportunities to keep growers on this path of continuous improvement. The other piece, to go back to your earlier question, what's changed in 20 years? The global market has only become more global, especially in the last 5 years. And so I don't think most North American producers would have thought that because of some of the global occurrences that have happened, they would have seen the changes that they've seen in short periods of time for fertilizer price or the commodities that they're selling or anything that they're buying, or accessibility to having the right chip in their combine to be able to harvest has really changed how growers operate. And so sustainable practices and sustainable approaches to what they're doing on the farm are only going to make them more resilient as we continue to have the crazy ups and downs that we have, because everything that happens impacts the supply and demand of everything that a grower is going to need to produce. But I'm very optimistic. I think growers are seeing the opportunities. I think we're having great connections with our downstream partners to bring growers value above and beyond for what they produce that's related to these outcomes that we can calculate for them.
Right. Janice, how about you? Final thoughts?
I talk about this a lot. Agriculture is an industry that is constantly hit by things over which they have absolutely no control. So if it's not the weather or some trade issues or, whatever it is, they get up in the morning and they get nailed by what have you. And they continue to get up in the morning and they continue to grow the food that we all eat, and they do an amazing job at it. And I think it is a very resilient industry and group of people. If you're still alive and you're still doing this over a long period of time, you've learned to be resilient. And I love the way Sally phrases it, that we're just doing things that are helping them to be even more resilient because there are new challenges. So to the degree to which we can be making them more resilient than they already are, they appreciate that. It makes agriculture better in Canada and find it extremely rewarding.
I want to thank you both very much. Sally and Janice, it's been a great conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
I've been speaking with Janice Holscher. She's the Managing Director and Head of Agricultural Banking at Scotiabank, as well as Dr. Sally Fliss, the Director of Sustainable Ag Programs at Nutrien Ag Solutions. The Perspectives podcast is made by me, Stephen Maurice, as well as Armina Lagaya and our producer, Andrew Norton. For a transcript of this episode, as well as other stories, insights, analysis, and thought leadership, visit our website, scotiabank.com/perspectives. We'll see you next time.